ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I'll keep my voice down a little bit at the moment because one or two people still praying. And once upon a, it's not that we can't have a talk going on at the same time as praying, but once upon a time when we didn't have the microphone, we'd have a small little majlis and everybody could hear the speaker if you listened hard enough, and people could still pray or read Quran without being disturbed. Today with the microphone it's a bit difficult, so we still have to give the rights, the huquq, to people who are doing slightly different things in the mosque. And of course it is hoped that apart from salah, prayer, especially fard salah, anyone who's reciting Quran or doing nafil prayers or doing some dhikr, non-obligatory dhikr, we would hope that it would be hoped that they would have enough fiqh, understanding of the religion, to put those things aside for the time being and engage themselves in majlis al-ilm, the circle of knowledge, because inshallah ilm, after the basic fara'id, after the obligations, then ilm is the best thing that we could attend to. Especially if it's a majlis, a gathering, which will talk about ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ, in the authentic du'as and supplications, he would say in one du'a, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilmun nafi' wa rizqan tayyiban wa amalan mutaqabbala. Oh Allah, I ask of you for knowledge which is beneficial, ilmun nafi', wa rizqan tayyib, and sustenance, provisions which are halal and good and lawful, and amalan mutaqabbala, and actions which are accepted by you. Because haqiqatan, the reality is, there is knowledge which is not beneficial. There is rizq, or there is provisions that we get that Allah doesn't like, and it's not halal and tayyib. And there are actions that we do that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't accept. But we hope in Allah for the first three, and we seek protection in Allah from the opposite three. So there is beneficial knowledge, ilmun nafi', as opposed to ilm, knowledge which is not beneficial. And one of the scholars of Islam, about 700 or 800 years ago, Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali, rahmatullah alayh, he has a small risala, a small booklet on beneficial knowledge. In fact, it has a very good translation in English as well. I think it's called Ibn Rajab's Heirs to the Prophets. Al-Ulama Warathatul Anbiya. He quotes that hadith. Al-Ulama Warathatul Anbiya. The scholars are the inheritors, the heirs of the prophets. The hadith is in Bukhari. And he comments on that, and in commenting he discusses ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge. So if you ever have a chance to read that risala by that great Zahid and Alim, Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali, rahmatullah alayh, it's really worth reading. It's quite fairly simple, and it's written very beautifully. But anyway, when scholars explain what is ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge, they normally contrast it with knowledge which isn't beneficial. If you understand knowledge which isn't beneficial, automatically you've understood what is beneficial. The ulama say, بِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيِّنُ الْأَشْيَاء. بِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيِّنُ الْأَشْيَاء. By their opposites are things best understood. Okay? By their opposites. If you explain, by the time you explain shirk, okay, associating partners with Allah, setting up rivals with Allah, then you've already got a good understanding of its opposite, tawheed. By the time you explain something to do with bid'ah, religious innovations, you've got an understanding of roughly what it means to follow the sunnah. By the time you explain what bad character is, you have an understanding of good character. بِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاء. By their opposites are things best understood. That's not all the time, but a lot of time in our lives, that's one of the best ways we learn. And the Quran actually takes that way many a time. And so they say, in order to understand beneficial knowledge, let's speak about knowledge which isn't beneficial. And they say, knowledge which isn't beneficial, غير نافع, is of two types. One type of knowledge which isn't beneficial is a type of knowledge which is not beneficial for everybody. And I'll explain that in a minute. And then there is another type of knowledge, of ilm, that is not beneficial, but it's only not beneficial for some people, but for other people it's beneficial. I'll give you an example of the first. Knowledge of sihr, of magic. Magic. The Quran speaks about how some people learn the art of magic so that they can split husband from wife. Magic is real, okay? Its effects are real. Just like the effects of alcohol, it's real and it happens. But just like alcohol, magic is haram too. Magic is more haram than alcohol because it causes more mischief. I'm not talking about magic as in you call a magician to some kiddie party and he pulls out a rabbit from the hat kind of thing. Those kind of tricks or illusions kind of. I'm talking about actual magic, whereby, obviously, not knowing the art, alhamdulillah, okay, not being a practitioner, alhamdulillah, whereby maybe you make some pact with the devil, or you recite some verse of the Quran backwards, or you do some really kufri type of thing, and it keeps you in connection with some of the evil jinns and whatever, and then they give you some kind of ability or whatever, however it comes about. I don't exactly know, but it works. But the Quran makes it absolutely haram that anyone should learn magic. And sometimes some of the Muslim communities, now I don't know if it happens all around the Muslim communities in the world, but it happens a lot with the Southeast Asian Muslim community. Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Indians. It doesn't happen so much, it seems like, with Malaysian and Indonesians, but it still does. It happens sometimes with Middle Eastern Muslim communities. I don't know much about North African, West African communities. But it happens that sometimes it will come into the idea that if I go to such and such a person, because you see, I'm having I'm being very stereotypical here, okay? The mother-in-law doesn't like the daughter-in-law. She doesn't like that her son likes him and whatever, they have a good relationship. So it comes into her mind somehow, off she'll go to someone who has some kind of amal, okay, that he can separate husband from wife, cause the hearts to drift apart. And if she does this or she does that, or he does it for her, this is haram. Some amal is halal, is good. Some of it is haram. And one of the ways you know this is if it is used for haram things, it's generally going to be haram. And secondly, if it's done in a way which is haram, you're invoking the jinn, you're doing something which doesn't seem to be right in Islam, then it's probably going to be haram. Okay? Never get involved in these things. Yes, if your child is ill and you want to recite some ruqya or ta'weed, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, ayatul kursi, or you want to make dummy words, these things are established in the sunnah and in the amal of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, and if not the Sahaba, the Salaf, the first three generations of Muslims. Even the issue of tying a ta'weed, an amulet, a ta'weed, ideally with Quran, or something from Quran or Hadith, some du'as or whatever, ideally. Even using this is jaiz, but some of the details the scholars differ upon. Take jaiz. And normally it used to be done in the early days with younger children who haven't yet learnt to recite much Quran or don't have the himmah, the ability to do all these du'as and all these dhikrs. Then we find the lady Aisha radiallahu anha, she used to write something on a little board and tie it around one or two of her nieces who were very little. So we get the idea of ta'weez there. Of course there are so many other ahkam to do with it. isn't it better to recite it with your tongue and believe it in your heart? That is the more powerful ta'weez, no doubt at all. You have something written here, Allah's kalam is powerful. Allah's kalam is powerful. Okay, don't underestimate it. But to have it here and to then not even pray or fast, but it's hanging, defeats the point. You may have a powerful sword, but what's the point of having a powerful sword if the hand itself is all weak? Okay. But if you have a powerful sword and the hand is powerful, subhanallah, much can be done. Many of the enemies can be fought off and vanquished. But I'm talking about sihr. Magic is that type of thing which is haram. Astrology, not astronomy. Astrology, using the stars and the alignment of the planets to tell your future and what's going to happen in your life and what's going to happen next week, whatever. Haram, absolutely haram. Reading the stars and astrology, fortune, all of these things are haram, as opposed to astronomy, which is the science of understanding the stars, the universe, and related issues. So magic, astrology are in and of themselves knowledge which is never considered to be beneficial. That's the point I was trying to make. As opposed to knowledge of Quran, of Hadith, okay, of how to get to Akhirah, how to please Allah. This is knowledge which is always beneficial. Then there is a type of knowledge which is not beneficial, not absolutely like magic or astrology, but it's not beneficial to me, but it might be beneficial to someone else. I'll give you an example. Here I am, a young man, let's say I'm 13, 14, something like this, 15, young man or woman, and I've not even learned the ahkam of wudu. I don't really know how to do wudu yet. I know you have to wash your hands somewhere, but I don't know the rest. Maybe I don't even know the rules of prayer. And not only do I not know these basic things, but I also don't know what are the rights that I owe my parents. Then at that stage of my life, no good you coming to tell me and say, oh, Abu Aaliyah, do you want to study usul al-fiqh, ilm al-hadith, tafsir, ilm al-hadith, science, knowledge of hadith, knowledge of tafsir, fiqh and usul al-fiqh, the foundations of Islamic jurisprudence. All of these are fantastic things, but they are not beneficial to me because I'm at the stage where I don't even know how to make wudu, I don't even know how to respect my parents. Okay, what happens? How can I study deeply Tafsir al-Tabari, Tafsir ibn Kathir, and all the details and the riwayat and all of these things? But you ask me, do you know how to make wudu? I think you wash your hands somewhere, right? No, one thing must come before the other. So at that time of my life, this beautiful ilm, ilm al-tafsir, ilm al-hadith, or whatever it be, this is not beneficial for me, but it will be beneficial for other people who are ready to learn this, like the tullab al-ilm, like the students who are learning the sacred Islamic sciences. And I have to have enough intelligence, I have to have enough aql to understand what is beneficial for me and what is not beneficial for me. A bit like in our day-to-day lives. I'm a diabetic. I mean, that's a fact, not just an example. I'm a diabetic, type 2, tablet diabetes, as opposed to insulin injection. So that means, just as a diabetic, I have to be clever enough and have enough willpower to keep away from certain foods. Okay? Whilst a nice jam donut or a chocolate eclair will be fantastic for so many people, it won't be too good for me. Not if I have them together. I don't know, jalebi and rasgulla, whatever it be, that might be fantastic for someone who is totally okay with their blood sugar levels, but will be disaster for someone who is very acutely diabetic. So they would have to have the knowledge that some foods are good for me and some food is not good for me. Ilm is like that. Ilm is like food in one sense. Knowledge is like food. That I have to understand that this is beneficial for me and this is not. And in order to know this, I have to be truthful to myself. I have to make some muhasabah. I have to look inside me and say, well, you know what, I don't really know the basics here. And remember, the Prophet ﷺ said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيدَةً عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيدَةً عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. The seeking of knowledge is compulsory upon every Muslim. And the word ilm here, as I've explained to many of you before, the word ilm here, knowledge, doesn't refer to any type of knowledge. Knowledge of medicine, knowledge of computer studies, knowledge of geography, knowledge of... No, ilm here means ilm shari, knowledge related to Allah, Rasul, Akhirah. Knowledge which will help us answer the three questions in your grave. Man Rabbuka, man Rasul, man Nabiyyuk, man Dinik. Okay? Who is your Lord, who is your Prophet, what is your religion? Knowledge which will help us answer those questions and live out the realities of those questions in our life. That is the first knowledge that ilm comes under. So if, for example, na'udhu billah, I didn't know how to pray, I didn't know how to fast, I don't even know much about Allah, but as a Muslim, I was a doctor, okay, or some engineer, or some IT expert, then I could not say to you, oh yeah, talabul ilmi faridatan ala kulli muslim. I fulfilled that hadith. Absolutely not. I didn't fulfill anything of that hadith. Because this hadith is telling us ilm shari first. Allah's not going to ask you. He will ask us, did you have halal kaman? Did you have a halal lawful income? We will be asked that. Be sure. Okay. We may have got away with cheating and whatever in the eyes of many people, but Allah is always seeing everything. But He won't ask us, oh, but why didn't you become a doctor or an engineer or. But if we did it for the sake of Allah, we were a doctor and engineer, and inshallah Allah will reward us. But He won't ask us this. What He will ask us is, did you have enough knowledge to know what I was? To know me? To fulfill my rights? To worship me? For your hearts to love me? Fear me? Have hope in my mercy and forgiveness? Have reliance or tawakkul on me? To be patient with my decree? Did you have enough knowledge to know the rights that you owe my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that you can make ittiba of him, follow him, and obey him, and live your life according to how he taught us? Did you know the arkan of Islam, the pillars of Islam, the arkan al-iman, the pillars of faith? Did you know the basic do's and don'ts of this religion called Islam? Did you know that there was no other path to me other than Islam? Inna dina inda Allahi al-Islam. These are the basic questions, knowledge that we will be asked about first. Allah won't ask me whether I know the age of the physical universe is 13.5 billion years old or a bit more or a bit less. That's not obligatory knowledge. If I know it, good. If I don't know it, not a great disaster. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't ask me, well, did you know that actually there are 7 versions of Microsoft software XYZ? No. But Allah will ask me this. So we have to be sure of beneficial knowledge. Now, let me explain it a little bit more, because it's really important, and one of the Musallis made a good point just before I started this talk. It's really important because sometimes we think ilm, knowledge, is only of Islam, is only really things that we need for the mosque. But actually, because our Islam is total, they say kamil shamil, total and comprehensive, I need to know that Allah is to be worshipped and obeyed inside the mosque and outside the mosque. So just as I need to know things that I should and can do in the masjid, and believe you me, many people don't know what they should and couldn't do in the masjid. Okay, unfortunately. You see how much noise is made in the masjid by people talking. It used to be young people, now it's even elders, now they're billah man dhalik. A'udhu billah, it's the house of Allah. Some brother's giving it the big. Doesn't he know? He's in the house of Allah. And what is the hukum of the house of Allah? Talking about dunya things, even if the hadith is mildly weak, talking about unnecessary dunya things, even if the hadith that mentions it is slightly weak, فيه ضعف, not موضوع, not ضعيف جدا, not munkar, not مضطرب, it's فيه ضعف. But the ma'na, the meaning that comes from there is generally accepted, that we should try to avoid unnecessary dunya conversations in the house of Allah. Because the Prophet ﷺ said to the Bedouin who urinated in the masjid, after he let him finish urinating, okay, which is quite a lesson to learn, because my reaction, your reaction would generally be, okay, that he's doing something really wrong, and they started running towards him, some of the Sahaba. This poor Bedouin, right, he looked up, he's in the middle of urinating, and in one riwayah, he's about to run, about to move away. So the Prophet said, no, don't do that, just let him finish. And the idea is, one of the commentaries, one of the shuruh of this hadith is that had he urinated and started running, then the mess would have gone just a few more, it would be more of a mess than not. There are other reasons why they say he stopped them. But anyway, he stopped them, get a bucket of water. Why? Because water is tahir, is purifying, it's pure and purifying, so it can wipe away najasat, it can wipe away impurities, and urine is an impurity. Urine is an impurity, which is why it's an obligation, obligatory knowledge. Part of obligatory knowledge, fard knowledge, is I must know how to purify myself after answering the call of nature. Okay, and the best way to purify ourselves, okay, front and back, is with something hard. They used to say with stones or rocks or pebbles, but in this day we have tissue paper and water. These two things, best way. If you can only use one of these things, then water is better than tissue paper. And if the water isn't present, tissue paper, and we should, and the Prophet said, do not use less than 3 stones. And because using 3 or more, it should wipe. But something hard, normally tissue paper and water, is the best way, one. If not, water on its own. If not, then tissue paper on its own. This is an obligation for me to know. And I should know as an obligation that I need to beware of soiling my clothes with urinal stains. The Prophet said in the hadith, which is authentic, one of the main reasons for adhab al-qabr, punishment of the grave, is clothes being soiled with one's urine stains because we didn't wipe ourselves properly. So here I am, I know big knowledge of politics and economics, right? I can tell you this ruler has done this hakim done this president, whatever. I can tell you the FT share index has gone up this point or down this point. I can tell you things about quantum physics that will blow your mind. But I don't even know something simple as how to do istinja or istijmar, cleaning myself with water or something solid. And this is an obligation. Okay. So the Prophet said to the Bedouin, come here. And he came and he said, these are the houses of Allah, or this is the house of Allah, which is only here for prayer, Quran, and remembering Allah. Prayer, Quran, and remembering Allah. Meaning, something to do with Allah. Have ittisal, with a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if you're sitting here making tafakkur, just contemplating, meditating over Allah's bounties, Allah's favours, or about death, or contemplating over an ayah of the Quran, what is its meaning, or contemplating over the sifat of Allah, the asma al-husna, the beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you're silent and you're in your contemplation, which is a very huge, important, tremendous ibadah. Then this is of course connected to Allah. If you quietly say, oh, brother, how are you? You're okay. I think, good, this is okay. How is your mother? I heard she was in hospital. This is okay as well, but keep it short, keep it quiet. Anything else, Oh, you know, bro, I got a good phone now. What am I? Did you see that boxing match? This rubbish should be left from the masjid. This rubbish should be left from the masjid. But yet we have people, many of us, day by day, we don't know these things. And it's really important. For no other reason then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a program, a method of how to connect to Him. We don't gain knowledge for the sake of knowledge. We don't gain knowledge for the sake. We gain knowledge because it's a wasila, it's a means to a goal. The goal is Allah. The goal is Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. But Allah Azza wa Jalla says, learn that type of knowledge which I have made fard upon you. Fard knowledge includes the rights that I owe Allah. Fard knowledge includes the rights that I owe other people, starting with ulama and my parents. It will include our neighbours. It will include cats, dogs. There's some rights they have over us. Include the earth itself. Fard knowledge will include things that the rights that we owe the Prophet, and of course that comes after the rights of Allah. And then there are extra knowledge that if you can do, alhamdulillah, better. If not, there is no harm. This is what we need to make sure of. And the reason why I say this is because whilst it is true that in one sense things are improving, more and more people are trying to learn some serious knowledge, but many people don't know the way to learn anymore. And so you have people on the internet, and you see people, young men and women today, they know lots of facts about Islam. They've read a lot on the net, but yeah, they're so jahil, unfortunately. They know information, but they don't know the levels of what is fard upon them. They don't even realize their levels. They say, oh, well, according to me, the strongest proof is, what is this bid'ah? What is this bid'ah? Strongest proof. Unless you know classical Arabic, and you've studied fiqh and usul al-fiqh, and you know nahu and sarf and all of those things to do with Arabic language, and you understand the principles of Islamic jurisprudence, the qawaid fiqhiyya, then you can weigh up as a jurist or as a trainee jurist. To say, this is the strongest proof. With what knowledge? With what ignorance? You're a baby. You haven't got wings to fly. You're only crawling. We're crawling and we're saying we're weighing up. And this has become like nearly everybody is doing it. And you ask them, well, did any one of the Sahaba, except the muftis from the Sahaba, did any one of the Salaf, except the ulama from the Salaf, the lay people from the early Muslims, did they ever weigh up? Never. Never. Did any of the Imams say weigh up? Did Abu Hanifah rahimahullah say to the average Muslim in the crowd, oh, but you too weigh up? No. But some jahil will come and tell me, oh, but don't you know Abu Aaliyah, the 4 Imams, they said, take from where I took. Don't blindly follow me, but take from where I took. Where did the Imams like Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Imam Ahmad and others, they take from? They took directly from the Book of Allah and the Hadith of the Prophet. Directly. You think they were telling the person who cannot even read Arabic, right? Barely speak English properly, but can't read Arabic, to go directly to the Book of Allah? Or do you think that they were talking to their students who were at the level of already becoming scholars? Do you think Abu Hanifa was talking to you and me, or was he talking to people like Abu Yusuf and Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Shaybani and Dhufar and others who became imams in their time? Do you think Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal were talking to people like you and me when he said, do not emulate Sufyan, do not emulate Malik, do not emulate Abu Hanifa, do not emulate Shafi, but take from where they took? Do you think he's talking to you and me, or do you think he's talking to people like Abu Bakr al-Sijistani, Al-Athram, Al-Maymuna, Abdullah, his son, or Salih, his son, who were at the level of the first rung of scholarship, of becoming fuqaha and ulama? But today, one of the biggest bid'ahs is, you have loads of people, loads of books, lots of things online. Oh, but the 4 Imams said, blah, 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 blah. And this is where you will see religion is being distorted. But let me go back to a simpler point. Because, and I say this because unfortunately what happens is we like its excitement. Okay? The film needs to be exciting. The talk needs to be dynamic. You don't want a simple talk like that. Okay? You know, when I was growing up, subhanAllah, in Leytonstone Masjid, on the big nights, okay, on the holy nights, they used to call Barirats, okay? We used to have some Shaykh come down from India, okay, with the highest, you know, Urdu, Shawwaliullah type of language that whatever, nearly everybody's Gujarati right in the mosque. Few Urdu speaking people, few Punjabi people, and then my generation is, you know, and he'll be throwing poetry this way, Ghalib here, and this poet here, and the talk would go on for 1.5 hours, right? Now, in school at that time in the 70s, our lessons were only 45 minutes long because it had been understood that your attention span can't be for more than 50 minutes. Now it's become like 35 minutes, right, or 40 minutes. And the elders were going through like 1.5 hours and whatever. But anyway, and one of the things I used to find is, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, and actually my parents are originally from India, so it's not racism. There was always a difference between that Pakistani khatib and the Indian khatib. And I even noticed this when I one time went to the United States in 1999, in 2000 I think I went. Pakistani khatibs generally, oh mashallah, you feel they just had a lot of curry, mirchi, spice, and they're boom, 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 boom. It's really, you compare to the Indian ones, Bhai Buzurgo, I want to tell you this, very calm. And I remember, and normally my khutbahs are a little bit fiery. So I went to one of the mosques in the United States, in Texas, and I just gave my normal khutbah. And a lot of people liked it. But about 7 or 8 elderly people came to me, kind of Uncle G people came to me. And they said, Beta, you know, very nice khutbah, you speak very nicely, but a bit loud. You need to just calm down, calm down. And I was a bit shocked. I said, oh, okay, I accept that. And I'll try to remember that because I had one more khutbah next week. So I was trying to keep it in my mind. So as we're going to, next week, as we're going to this other masjid, I thought, just remember, this is not Britain, this is not London, East London, boom, 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 boom. No, this is, so I'm going to try to keep it really nice and calm. So, alhamdulillah. And I made dua to Allah, and then my khutbah started, and it was really nice. And I was so happy, alhamdulillah, very calm. And I finished it. Some young people came to me, they liked it, whatever. Some Uncle G's came to me, and said, Beta, you know, I don't know where you've been, but we normally like our khutbahs a little bit. Thoda Josh there needs to be some fire in there. And I'm like, I was confused. So then, as we were going out to dinner after Jummah, I said to one of the brothers who was organising it, I said, I think I'm doing something wrong here. Because last week, they said this to me. So this week, I went, did what they said, and they complained. He said, oh, Abu Ali, if only you told us last week, we would have told you that that first masjid was a masjid full of Indians. Right, Desi Indians, right? And this masjid is nearly all Pakistanis, all Karachiites or wherever they're from. So the first one you had to be and this one, I was even thinking, where is Abu Aaliyah's fire? He's just like, all the steam has been taken out. Anyway, different natures of people, but the reality is though, ilm has to be learned properly. That's my thing. And ilm is not just to finish this, ilm is not just for the masjid. Allah, the ilm that Allah has given us, and I want to end on this, is a rahmah. Ilm is a rahmah. Which is why my brothers and elders, and if there are sisters listening, ever since the time of possibly Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah ta'ala, 2 of the great imams of the 3rd generation of Muslims, of the Tabi'un, Abdullah ibn Mubarak and Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Imam Shafi said about Ibn Uyayna, if it wasn't for Sufyan ibn Uyayna and Imam Malik, the knowledge of the Sunnah would have been lost from the Hijaz, would have been lost from the area of Makkah and Medina. And Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, well, he is just the first Shaykh of Islam, the Shaykh of Shaykhs. In every single science that you think of, hadith, aqidah, fiqh, tafsir, tasawwuf and tazkir, Ibn al-Mubarak is an Imam. So much so that in 1 year he would teach, and the following year he would go out on the front lines where the Russian regions were to make jihad. But because he was so well known, he would tie the turban around him, so that would be a niqab, so that people couldn't know who he was, so he could keep his intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Anyway, one of the two started the tradition that whenever students came to them, the very first hadith that they would learn as a talib al-ilm is what they call the musalsal al-awwaliyya. The musalsal al-awwaliyya. And it's the hadith in Tirmidhi, which the Prophet said that the Prophet said that those who show mercy will be shown mercy to. Have mercy to the people of the earth and the one in heaven, and there's a reading, those in heaven. So we'll go with the first reading. And the one in heaven will have mercy on you. Yani Allah. Ar-Rahimun yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. Those who show mercy will be shown mercy to by Allah ar-Rahman. And this will be the very first hadith a student of knowledge would learn in his talab, in his or her learning of Islamic knowledge. Why? To learn the issue. Knowledge is mercy. It leads to mercy. Its fruits are mercy. It must be learned with a heart full of mercy. Knowledge is linked to rahmah. And this is why when we learn at the feet of the ulama, this is the first hadith they were trying to teach, the musalsal al-awwaliyya, the first hadith. And from that time onwards, it has become the first hadith any major scholar or serious scholar has taught his students first, so that the intention is clear. Knowledge is not there so you can defeat someone in argument, so you can show, look what I know. Okay, you can go around saying this is bid'ah, this shaykh, this, and my shaykh is the only shaykh that knows, and all of this foolishness. Knowledge is because it will bring me to the rahmah of Allah, the rahmah ilahiyya. Because it will tell me how to be a human being. Because it will connect me to the sunnah of al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is sheer rahmah. The rahmah of how to clean myself in istinja. The rahmah of how to treat my parents, whether they're alive or they're passed away. The rahmah of how to treat my cat. The rahmah of how to get the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my prayer. The Musalli said to me just before I came, he said, Abu Aaliyah, could you speak one day about prayer? Because he feels that he sees many people coming in. He didn't point to anyone. And he feels that, some of these people come in and they only come in for the prayer and then they go out and whatever, but they don't do sajda properly, and they got their legs are in a different position, and they're all scratching and they're moving their heads and watching this and whatever, fidgeting too much. And perhaps that's because they don't know enough about prayer. And half the time, sometimes that is the case because we don't know enough about prayer. We know something about prayer, but not enough. And the enough that we don't know is how to have hudur, how to have presence of heart, khushu'. And what really is prayer? What really is prayer? Beyond a few bowings and prostrations. And I said, yes, it's a very important topic. I do try to now and again mention some things of it, but yes, one day we will spend some time. But what I'm trying to say is, this is the type of ilm. So that this ilm will lead me to what? To be connected to Allah. To learn what is sin and what is obedience. So that I can move away from sin and I can make tawbah from my sins. So that the veils over my heart are removed by Allah. And the heart is open to the nur of Allah and the hidayah of Allah. And the heart is then lifted up to be in the hadratul ilahiyya, in the presence of God. Because hearts were created only to be in the hadratul ilahiyya, in the presence of Allah. The heart is the most sensational thing in this universe. The human heart, the qalb, is the most sensational thing, because this qalb can actually, and this is not literal, don't take it hakiki, literal. This qalb can contain Allah. As Ibn al-Qayyim says, the hadith is weak, which says, the seven heavens and the earth cannot contain me, but the heart of my believing servant can contain me. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, though it's agreed by the muhaddithun that this hadith is not sahih, But it's also agreed, the ma'na is sahih. Because Iman billah, the ma'rifah of Allah, the khushu and the khashya of Allah, the maqam for this is the heart. ألا في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. There is a piece of flesh in the body, the Prophet said. If it be whole and sound, all of the body is whole and sound. If it be diseased and corrupted, all of the body is diseased and corrupted. ألا وهي القلب. Indeed, that is the heart. In another hadith in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet said, التقوى ها هنا ها هنا ها هنا. Piety is here, pointing to his chest, sallallahu 3 times. Okay. There is no doubt about this. There's no difference of opinion what I've said here. Okay. But this is what life is about, and ilm is a wasila to this. I know that after the fara'id, my prayers and my giving my zakat and fasting in Ramadan, obedience to parents, earning a lawful job if I'm old enough to earn a lawful job, and looking after my wife and dependents because it's my obligation, ar-rijal qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa, then the best way I can draw closer to Allah is in 2 ways, through ilm and through dhikr. Through ilm and through dhikr. Of course, ilm has a higher daraja in the sense that al-ulama warathatul anbiya. But if a person has enough knowledge and then does dhikr, he becomes even higher. Sometimes, it doesn't happen all the time, because most scholars, alhamdulillah, are pious people. Most scholars, alhamdulillah, are pious people. But sometimes, it can happen that a scholar misses the point of his knowledge, and he, just with his knowledge, he wants dunya. Okay. So he teaches, but he also does things that Allah is not pleased with. So there is a lot of khair in him, but there is some not khair. But if someone has the basic knowledge and makes the dhikr of Allah consistently, he can reach a higher degree than that such a person. But if he is an alim, amil, meaning he is a scholar who acts upon his knowledge with his hands and with his heart, then of course he's going to reach that daraja that no one's going to reach. But subhanAllah, my brothers and elders, I can't tell you. I can't even tell myself what potential Allah has created in us. And you know, I can only think of silly examples, and I've not thought of a better one since. It is like, give me the name of one of the best cars today, probably designed by Germans, no doubt, but give me a name of a car that is really good, you know, we're really top notch. I know it's not Skoda, right? So it's like a BM or a Merc or something like that, right? Really high-tech design or whatever. And let's just say they're one of those £150,000 cars, right? Okay. It's like having one of those cars, but you'll never go more than 7 miles an hour. You never put it into 2nd gear or 3rd, let alone 5th gear, let alone it shoots off like a rocket. You're always 7 miles an hour. And then people scratch their head thinking, oh, wow, he's got such a brilliant car. Why does he only chug along at 7 miles an hour? Perhaps the angels are asking. Allah has given them such a deep heart to know Allah, to be filled with the knowledge and the ma'rifah of Allah. Why are they only going 7 miles an hour with it? Why haven't their hearts flown to Allah? Because we forgot. And I'll end up with a very simple story that I was told when I was a kid, and some of you would have. The story of the circus flea. So there was a little flea, little flea. And it used to be part of a circus. Of course, this is not true, right? In case someone said, Abu Aaliyah told us a hadith. So there was this circus flea. And it used to be part of the circus. From the day it was born, it was part of the circus. And what it used to do in the circus, it used to just jump for the people. And the people used to be amazed. Look how high! This little flea is this small, but it can jump as high as that ceiling. And they were, wow! One day some envious eye saw this flea, said, you know what? I want this flea for myself. It's such a famous flea, I want it for myself. So at night he came, and the flea was sleeping in a little matchbox. And he stole the flea and the matchbox, and he took it away to some distant land. And he kept the flea in the matchbox, imprisoned in the matchbox. So the flea, by its nature, by its fitrah, it just loved to jump. That's all he's been doing since he was a little kid. Now it's an adult. And so he got up and he thought, where am I? But never mind, wherever I am. And he went to jump and it hit his head. Poof. Because now he was used to jumping ceilings this high. Now the ceiling is only this high. He's in a matchbox. And he thought, oh, what's this? And then he went to do it again. And poof. It really hurt him. After some time he realized that he loves to jump, but he knows he can't jump that high because he's going to hurt himself. So slowly and steadily, as days and days went on, as weeks and weeks went on, he learned to jump, but only jump this high. He learned to enjoy jumping, but not to hurt himself. So by a few weeks of training, he had conditioned his mind and his body to jump with joy, but not as high as the matchbox ceiling, just. And this happened. He went on happy for years and years and years. And then one day, purely out of accident, the original master of the circus saw this flea and said, hey, this is our flea. And the flea said, yeah, I'd like to come back to you. So brought him back to the flea, and he said, get rid of this matchbox, you're ready to go for it. And he said, thank you, and he went, yippee, and he jumped, but it only jumped that high. Because after years and years and years, he had conditioned himself to jump only as high as the ceiling of the matchbox. We are that flea. Our hearts are that flea. And the Quran comes and says, O people, O Muslims, Ya ibadallah, the world and your nafs and shaitan and dunya and hawa has conditioned you only to jump this high. But really I created you to jump sky high. Your hearts can reach me in a way that angels couldn't. Don't you even remember the story of your father, Adam alayhi salam? And that's how the Quran starts, after Fatiha, really. I mean, after Fatiha and a few talking about the munafiqun and mu'minun and what, then it goes straight into to just remind us who we are, what potentials we are. The angels didn't even realize, which is why they found it strange to bow down to Adam alayhi salam. Because he's just clay and mud, right? And we are created from nur. And this clay and mud thing, we know that he will be able to disobey. But we can't even disobey, we just obey you 24/7. We just do your hamd and thana, day in, day out. So how comes we do sajda to ta'zim, sajda to tashrif to this clay kind of creature? But when the ruh was put in Adam, and Adam was taught the names of all things, then the haqiqah became clear, right? Then the angels are here. And we inherit this Adamic potential. We inherit this Adamic potential. So there's not one of us, including the one who speaks now, who actually has wings to fly, but we choose to crawl. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that let Him give us the ilm and nafi, which will help us to understand that we have wings to fly, not just to crawl. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give us tawfiq to learn and fulfill the fara'id that is upon us, the fara'id that we owe to Allah, the obligations we owe Allah, the obligations that we owe others, the obligations we owe ourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes ilm and amal our main goal in life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives to our ilm and amal ikhlas, sincerity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbaka wa hubba man yuhibbuka wa hubba amalin yuqarribuna ila hubbik. Oh Allah, we ask of you for your love and the love of those things that you love, and the love of those people, and the love of those people that will draw us closer to your love. And we ask, according to how the Prophet taught us, Allahumma inni as'aluka ladhatu nadhri ila wajhik wa shawqa ila liqa'ik. Oh Allah, give me the delight at gazing at your face and the yearning to meet you. Because there is no delight except the delight to be with Allah and for the eyes to see Allah. And there is no yearning greater than the yearning for the heart to be in the Hadratul Ilahiyya. O Muslims, O brothers, O elders, this is really what we were created for. If life has made us forget that today will be a reminder to all of us to make a U-turn and start learning to fly. May Allah give us tawfiq wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillah.